Buenas tardes, buenos días.
Hi everyone. Everyone here in La Serena and the ones that are online, I'm very happy to welcome you again to our colleague Ricardo Moyano, all right? And from people from the Museo Limarí, all right? He just finished a very important research funded by the government, okay, regional government, regarding the structures of the indigenous communities in Chile. The project, in one of the many reports, presents the benefits of storytelling the past stories and compare them with the present studies, so as to spread all the knowledge regarding astronomy. We are very happy to share this space and time with Dr. Moyano in this month of heritage. Okay, thank you very much. And please, let's begin. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time and attention. Okay, today's lecture is not necessarily related to the cultural aspects with math of the sky observation in Coquimbo, but it is related and makes a lot of sense in the context in which we are embedded today. Okay, next, we need to understand that, Alicia, please. We need to understand that we live in a very wide region. Our American continent had cultural development independently compared to the rest of the world, and in particular, the area that is concentrated, which is today Mexico and the United States, and a big part of Central America, all of that area that composes by Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and some parts of Argentina and Chile, it created a huge cultural unit, okay, that its origins are they have their own unique origins. Recently, I have been doing some field research in the coast of Peru in sites that are older than 4,000 years before Christ, in which we have development of different communities, okay, and continental also heritage in other parts, such as in old Mesopotamia. Next, please. So today, I am going to be speaking to introduce some concepts related to the numbers of the American continent, the use of geometry that starts from the systematic observation of nature that has been defined as part of the cosmovision of in the studies of the American studies, and how these numbers and these geometries translated into the particular architecture of communities. Architecture is not only the reflection of a cosmovision, a point of view on understanding the world, but also it creates and recreates an adaptation of its surroundings. When we build our houses, when we build our roads, our temples, we provide a cultural sense to what it is surrounding us. And that is astronomical culture, which is the discipline that embeds and embraces this kind of work. The systematic observation of nature, the skies, and the phenomena that surround us. It makes sense to human beings in this context. In particular, in the Mesoamerican world, I'm going to be speaking about this in the Andine world, there were two types of calendars, okay? One ritual that allowed people to anticipate, okay, to the personality to someone, understand environmental and nature phenomena back in the day, that it was a calendar of 260 days, that it was called Tzolk'in in the Mayan calendar. This calendar, this ritual calendar, was along with another calendar, a 360, 365 days calendar that in the Nahuatl world, in the Mayan world, allowed to articulate time and space. Okay, both calendars were kind of synchronized in a higher period. Okay, like in a period of 52 years, in which was the period in which they had a lot of ceremonies, important ceremonies regarding the nature, the earth, the soil, the universe. One of the characteristics of this Mesoamerican world, and it seems like the same in some parts of Latin America, it was the bi-decimal conformation of the numbers. A huge part of these calendars are presented today in the architecture, okay, in the codes systems, and also still they are present in the ethnography of some peoples in South America. In general terms, the Mexica Empire or Azteca, they had their origins around 1300 around AD from groups that migrated from the north with traditions that focus the handling of the rocks, okay, and the handling of the surroundings. They established a political center in which today's Mexico City is Tenochtitlan. And according to the myth, it was built on the center of a huge lake in which an eagle was on the top, okay, and was turning into a snake. And from the construction of this Tenochtitlan, Mexico, it was created a state, like an imperial kind of state, that covered from the Cancer Tropic until currently Honduras and Guatemala. One of the main features in the Mexica world is that if it's complexity in terms of architecture, you need to think that Mexico, when the Spaniards arrived, they had more or less 250,000 people. So it was a huge place. So it was respected the cardinal points. Please next, like observation points, and also was established networks of commerce, business, long term, okay, so as to interchange different products. As a counterpart, the development of the Andine world, and this is a very broad view, is the result of a huge and long tradition of trials and errors of many cultures that were part of Latin America, which today is the Inca world. They established their capital in the city of Cusco, okay, and it turned into cultures from that. And the so-called sons, okay, they expand their empire from 1,400 more or less, covering the south of Colombia, some part of Ecuador, Peru, some part of Bolivia, Argentina also,
De estas decisiones.
hasta
and
el río Maule,
until Maule River,
acá en el centro
okay,
de Chile.
in the center
Una de las
part of Chile.
características del
One of the main
Imperio Inca
features of the Inca Empire is
era su capacidad de
Tawantinsuyo.
adaptarse a
It
distintos
was
diseños,
the capacity to adaptability
ambientes ecológicos,
to different
construían
ecological
caminos como el
contexts. They
Capaminal,
built a huge road,
establecía conexiones
okay,
con distintos puntos
that established connection between different points.
también
And
puso
also
mucha atención
it put a lot of
la
attention
realidad de los
on the
incas,
skies. The view of the Inca, it was Cusco, okay, that it still exists today. And according to the works related from the beginning of the 20th century, we know that this establishment, this city, had different temples dedicated to different activities, the Sun Temple, the Lagoon Temple, and there were huge main squares where people would gather to do different kind of activities. And one of the main features from the Incas is that starting from the conformation of the space, okay, and its capital, they also established some lines like vision lines. So in a matter of speaking, from the position of the sun, the position of the moon and the stars, especially focusing on the horizon, despite that the observation wasn't something very particular yet. Next, please. So from the comparative point of view, okay, please go back to another one. Astronomy is part of a cosmological system throughout the world, and there is some background that this is a very ancient kind of activities. At least I guess that 11,000 years before Christ, So this is a great place, and this is the result of the human activity in the context in which it didn't exist the agriculture or construction in a world that it was very different from what we have today. We were just coming out of the last ice age, and it was just groups of hunters and recollectors that were gathering around the territory, and they managed to build these kind of temples. So they build these small ceremony centers in a circular shape, and it has a very important characteristic, okay? This monolith made of rock, they were drawn some figures that, related to the concepts of the first constellations in the Mediterranean world, and also related to Occident. There are snakes, foxes, insects, drawings that, and this, hypothetically speaking, this would provide a cosmological construction related to the sky observation and also to the observation of the space, which is very long distance regarding the time. Another background that is very well known, they had to do with the orientation, okay, of the whole Stonehenge monument in England, in which the editing line, okay, it looks towards the solstice and also into the extreme position of the moon, starting from the alienation of the circle that was built by huge poles, okay, first wood and then rocks, the stone. It was organized the space so as to get this geometry, the movement of the sun, the movement of the moon, and the organization of these spaces. One of the main features of this type of places is that it is not only, it is not something like an instrument, an astronomical tool, okay? Let's remember that the non-occidental conception of the world, it was a space also related to ceremony, the consumption of plants, okay? Ceremonies dedicated to meteorological phenomenon or even earth and soil. Those are spaces in which are concentrated the political power, the social structure, organization of the people. So next, please. Another, this is not a monument, this is an artifact, okay? This is the solar disk of Nevera, okay, which was found in Germany, okay, is ancient, like 1600 BC, okay? This artifact that has approximately this size, it would represent from the usage of a circle, of a small, half a moon, a group of points that were highlighted, the sky, from those times, the sunset, the equinox, the solstice, and December solstice. As you can see here, in general, these representations, these cosmological representations, it corresponds to a circle, and as a first orientation is always the north and the east, okay, which is the place where the sun comes up in the morning. So we have two extreme points that has to do with the sunset in June and December, an intermediate point in equinoxes, and in the sunset we have the solstice and equinox and equinox. Next, please. One of the main features of these first systems, these cosmological systems, we have another interpretation of this Nebra instrument artifact that it was referencing to the position, okay, of a nova, Cassiopeia, always referencing, okay, to what it is observed. Human being relates, constructs, designs, and gets orientation regarding to what he can see and what he can understand. And in this matter, we need to be very careful because many times this discipline, okay, called cultural astronomy, is misunderstood, okay, as a field of research very close to the esoteric knowledge. That is a huge problem that we need to deal and struggle, and we need to fix it through the gaining of scientific data, obtaining cultural specific context. After this introduction,
el origen de esta geometría básica y este uso cosmológico del cielo a partir de la descripción de lo
I'm
que ha sido descrito como
We lost the audio. Okay, there we go. Starting from the description, as it's been described as radial systems, okay, orientation systems in America. One of the most well-known background is related to the area of Nazca, Peru, near Lima, in the coast, in which we can see 200 BC, all the 600 BC and CE. It was built from the clearance of the floors from the human intervention, okay, in the surface, lines that were extended throughout several kilometers. These lines, in general, have a width of 1 meter, perhaps, or even more, and they are looking towards based on the direction of the water sources, and in some occasions also to the position of the sun in the horizon for equinox and solstice in the less few cases. One of the Nazca characteristics is the representation of animals and figures that are not necessarily exist in the area. Okay, they exist in other parts, like in the jungle. So, but they cover huge territories. Alicia, please, next. That allowed in some kind of way to complement and to add up a certain resource, economy, feeding, and observation features. There is a very interesting work from 1983 that is from a geographer from Germany, Franz Tichy, in which he states that these old systems of observation, these lines projected on the landscape, they had an origin, maybe not unique, but understood by geometry, okay, that we find in the city of Cusco, okay, possibly also in the area of Nazca, and also in other areas from the American continent. So Franz Stigi, he states that the possibility of dividing, okay, the circumference of 300 from 360 parts into 80 parts, 40 parts and 20 parts. So what does he finds is that many of these proportions are present in geometry of South America in the orientation and observation of the roads, and something very important in the orientation of some churches of the colonial times located in the south part of Mexico and in the Puebla region, which is very close to Mexico City. This work turns out to be very important and interesting, not only because it is a background, okay, to explain these cosmological models by geometry, but also because it finds a similarity within the ethnography that we can test today in the north of Chile. Only just as a matter of example, this is a projection of lines, imaginary lines, from a ceremonial point located in Socaire in Atacama Desert in Chile, southwest of Alma Observatory. In this place, there is data that from 1950s that these visual observations, imaginary lines, they were looking to the topography mountains. It constituted a seque system. Seque is a Quechua word for line, okay, that corresponds to this projection of this imaginary line of the landscape that in some cases could have had an astronomical sense. Okay, when we observe the horizon, there is a prominent mountain, we can find some point that could correspond to some of the so-called markers, okay, that within the astronomy, they allow you to validate this orientation. If I am located myself in a period of time in the same position of the territory, I can observe the position of the sun and the movement of the sun and determine the position in a certain date. In the case of the Andean world, the mountains have been defined as places in which the ancestors live when the water goes down, okay? And in the Quechua world, also is the space in which the forefathers live. So if this condition, of this sacred condition of the mountains, we add up the possibility of the sun to have this specific position in a specific part of life, the mountain gets a most important value to the communities. So let's go back to Mesoamerica. There are some examples from the architecture. We have a site here, which is very nice to visit if you have the opportunity to go to Mexico and have the time to go to Veracruz. Go to this place, which is El Tajín, which is a place from, it has been defined, it is contemporaneous of Mayan world, okay? But it can correspond to the local communities. It is 800 years old, okay? And it has a very interesting characteristic that has the amount of niches or windows that are located in the four sides of this structure or pyramidal structure, okay? 91 niches per side, and in total they have 364, quite close to the amount of days that a solar year has. From the works that different researchers have been doing, okay, Chesky, Ionis Branch, and Sugalindo, it has been understood that this kind of structures, which is very big, it would represent a symbol of the extension of a solar year from the architecture of the community and the spatial organization of the space. Another example, very interesting, in the Mesoamerican world, it has to do with the site of Teotihuacan site, which is 40 something kilometers from the city of Mexico, and it corresponds to the place in which the gods were generated, okay? One of the main features of Mesoamerican is that from the solstice and equinox, okay, from the Kuchika and Mayan world, they were looking for to establish dates that form like families of days. That is the concept. Like numbers like 52, 53, they are repeated in geometry starting from the orientation regarding the geographical north and the astronomical north, from the place in which the stars move, and in the possibility to follow the sun, okay, and its trajectory. In the case of the Teotihuacan site, the axis in which it is, turned over, it generates an angle, okay? Next, please. It generates a phenomena that is very interesting. If you position yourself, okay, in the high part or the low part of the pyramid, you will be able to observe the sunset using this detection of 50 degrees detection in 20 minutes in the dates of 13th of August and 29th of April. Those dates, it is more or less located, depending on how we count, 52 days to the solstice of June. And these dates are repeated in the architecture, and it is repeated in the way of counting the time that exceeds the use of the solstice. In a matter of speaking, very simple, of building a calendar, okay? And also, it's very interesting, another way to count time, okay, in which the use of the numbers 52 and 160, it allows us to build this calendar near to the solar calendar, known as computational calendar, which has 364 days. This is just an example. Another characteristic of Teotihuacan and other South American cities is that the same geometry and the same location, spatial location of the pyramid, of the moon pyramid, allow us not only to generate this correspondence between the avenue and the space in which it is observed, let's say it people or Mesoamerican communities, but also to establish these dates, 13th of August, to the north, but also to know in the diagonal, the position of the sun, okay? The other image is better. The image of the sun for the sunset, okay, in the solstice of June, okay? This image was taken by Aaron Gonzalez, okay, with Arturo Montero via drone, okay? Now, why am I presenting this? If you can see the pyramid by itself, it would be the representation of the sacred mountain. I told you that the mountain is a ritual space, okay, a ritual place in which they pray, they ask for help. So the construction of a pyramid in a space in which in the past there was nothing in the past, so it requires a huge effort. So build these kind of monuments it lasts centuries, but let's see it this way: knowledge or previous knowledge to create this and to construct this kind of constructions, it brings us to the knowledge that, next please, that is quite complex, that allow us to understand why do we need a calendar, how many calendars there are, okay, and in Mesoamerica, and understand also, I mean, and it is part of the final part of the lecture, is to understand why these people had so much time to build this huge construction that require a lot of effort, a lot of time, and also this development of a science, in a manner of speaking, so as to build these monuments. Okay, so in anthropological context, it is understood it is a tool, the calendar, that allows us to control time. Actually, in Mesoamerican context, there is a deity related to time. It assumes a personality, an entity, okay? It enforces certain kind of power into people. And so as to understand time, we need to observe the elements in our surroundings, like the sun, to understand the extension, also observe the moon, understanding the calendar of the moon, okay, regarding the position of the moon and regarding the background of the stars. And also in the long term, you can construct and build artificial calendars, which can be or not take into account some reference of nature, okay? So we have calendars, lunar, moon calendars, sun calendars, okay, and space calendars. In that sense, the construction and design of the calendar also allow us, in the case of on the Mayan world, okay, to go back into a moment, a mythical moment, okay? This is one of the few examples in American world in which the usage of the calendar, a day's calendars, one by one, give us a date, an origin date that has to do with the long-term account, which is around the year 300 and 114 BC, and that allow us not only to date, archaeological monuments, but also understand the ethnography, okay, in the rural art, and also the ethnography of areas like Mesoamerica. So in this sense, the calendar is the reflection of a social structure. It allows as a tool to understand the monuments and understand the population, current population today, that are present in the American calendar. From the point of view of the cosmology, these calendars they have been designed and constructed, okay, in paintings, okay, and also in different formats. And many times, if not in every time, this calendar had to do with certain roads, okay, and cosmological orientation. In general, next please. It is respected the orientation of the east, where the sun arises as the main space, the direction in which we need to do the ceremony, the direction in which we also need to look forward to understand the gods, and the infrastructure and space in which the temples are built and the spaces in which the pyramids are located, and also the space that we can see in which you turn time, okay? In general, and not always, in the American world and Mesoamerican world understands that time, the day, it starts by the east, it goes up our heads, using the sun position, and finish on the west. If we are in the south hemisphere, Chile, Peru, south of the equator, the sun, most part of the year goes up by the year, and the sunset is on the west. On the west part, in general, is related to the dead world context, and in the spaces that there is no kind of fear, and in the space in which the sun dies every day, okay? The infraworld, okay, starts on the west and goes to the south in some occasions, as in this representation. Other application, practical application of the calendar has to do with the handling of the agriculture, and in the case of the Incas, in Tahuantinsuyo Empire, we have a lot of data regarding the use of the calendar, solar calendar, regarding the agriculture, mainly in August and September months, which are very close to the winter, summer equinox, in which the Earth would get ready before the rise of the temperatures. Next, please. Another cosmological representation of the world, we go back to Socaire in Atacama Desert, in which we can see again this representation of the surroundings. It is contained by the mountains. It's represented by like a small kind of circle in which we have mountains and volcanoes. As I was telling you, in the Atacamanian area, in the Inca world, these mountains are acknowledged as spirits, spaces in water is contained, and the organization of the space respects the orientation of the sun, okay, the north to the left of the observer, okay, and the west in which, of course, the sun dies. One of the main features of this area, in particular, is that most part, I would say 90% of the mountains, they have archaeological evidence at the top of them from the Inca period, from the construction of some platforms, roads, okay, and offerings that in some cases even are understood as capacocha. Capacocha is the human sacrifice, okay, that had to do with these kids, you know, children that were sacrificed in the highest points so as to generate this link between the mountain, the community, and the sun in this case, okay, or even the moon. In particular, the volcano, okay. Another is a very interesting topic about the use of geometry regarding the Chichen Itzan area. In this case, we have a particular thing, okay, by the use not of the horizon, but the passing of the sun of the horizon, okay? One of the main features of this area, which is located between Capricorn and Cancer, the latitude, okay, 23.5 latitude, okay? We have the sun directly up above our heads, and that doesn't happen here in the region of Coquimbo, but it does occur in Chichen Itzan, okay, in which May the 23rd and July the 19th allowed, in some kind of way, not only to include this phenomena, okay, of light and shadow, which is quite well known, which is the descent of the feathered serpent in this archaeological area, but also, let's call it this way, to include the structure to the pyramid of the castle as part of, let's call it, the solar geometry in this area. Say it differently, the diagonal, okay, of this pyramid was built regarding the zenithal walkthrough, okay? I have another image here in which you can see the zenith diagram. So the pyramid, it could be, you know, be looking towards the north. It could have been looking into the extreme parts of the south, okay, but they didn't. But they tried and they used the area to generate this geometry, okay, in which it is established the guidelines, between the staircase and the angle that I can see here, okay, that corresponds, that in this sense, next please, the peoples that made origin of this, they not only use the architecture, okay, but also they use the nature elements, in this case, a zenith, okay, that corresponds, okay, which is like a hole on the ground, okay, that also besides offerings and it was used, the zenith was used as an important part to mark the position during the year in a physical space. And this only happens in this latitude. So if I go 80 kilometers at the same place, okay, it's going to change, okay? If I move 200 to the north, to the south, it's going to change significantly. What do I want to say with this? So, previous the existence of the pyramids, maybe the old peoples of America in general, they use elements natural as the mountains to understand important dates. Why is this important? Why do we use it? This is something that we always make to ourselves, okay, in the social sciences. Within astronomy, okay, very general point of view, it is easy to understand and to know the dates of the solstice and equinox and to anticipate, okay, in which the moon is going to be positioned in certain path, okay, but it is quite difficult to anticipate to an eclipse, okay, which corresponds to next, please. The moment in which the sun dies, the moon dies, the time dies, and the social structure is not adjust. So old Mesoamericans, they were quite clever to mark intermediate dates, so they were very skilled to define the medium equinox, which is the astronomical equinox. Many of these structures are looking towards those dates. They were skilled also to identify also that has to do with these families of days in which we find monuments and architecture places, depending on the latitude, the geographical latitude, between March, April, September, and depending if the family was related to the 7365 of 62, depending on the solstice. But also, it was extremely difficult to know the moment. Okay, Mayan culture, they developed a very interesting model to predict eclipses. Okay, in which from the observation of the different months in packages of 6 moon months, they could understand and foresee. But it seems the use of the architecture, and this is just an example, the current architecture of the looking forward of this metropolitan cathedral of Mexico City, it is quite close to the old pyramid. They were kind of able to predict, but starting from the use of geometry, understanding it with the use of geography. I'm moving very fast now. So how did they fix it? Okay, the Andine peoples. As I was telling you, Cusco is located here in the middle of the political capital of the Inca world. The Incas handled stone, they carved the stone in a very good way. Actually, their elders, they found it on rocks and the stones. They turned everything into stone and they turned into mountains. And they built something, these lines that are, into the landscape, a system of calendar based as a seques, okay, system, which is an imaginary line, okay, in the landscape. And this is projected from the Sun Temple, which corresponds to the southeast part of the political center, okay, or from the center of a platform that is known as Yushun, and it marked a particular date, okay, and also the passing of the sun from the zenith and from the Ushnu, okay, from the highest part, okay, it is measured, and in the zenith, it's the projection of 180 degrees to the south. So what the Cusqueño did, they built a calendar system that allowed organized society, a seque calendar system that had an interpretation of, it had an origin on the moon, okay? Such as like the one in India, it is separated the sky in moon houses, in moon spaces, so in which the moon walked through the night, okay? And this seque calendar or ritual calendar established some periods related to the zenith and the nadir, okay, from the sun, and from the solstice dates and equinox dates. Here is 103, sorry. And in some kind of way, it provided a numerology for astronomy that was performed in the Cusco, okay, which is the 30 degrees south position. There are different proposals from these calendars, okay? There are some people that speak about a solar calendar, 365 days, a fixed moon calendar, okay, mobile calendars, also calendars, artificial calendars. Next, please. There are other proposals that state that the possibility to observe the moon with a background of stars, which is the second type, 27.3. There are proposals to the start of the year in December, March, in the passing of the sun in the Senate, and when all of these proposals were kind of making a mistake, they were turning into a complementary thing. They are related to just one time. The ritual organization of the space from these spaces that are called huacas, that are small temples, okay, places in which we get water, mountains that are located in the surroundings of the Cusco, in which people would offer different, and they would observe. Some of these huacas, okay, they were huge pillars, okay, that eventually allowed them to observe an eclipse and anticipate to the next one. We know that the same eclipse in the same part of the world has certain kind of recurrence, and in general, you can observe it. It is easier to observe a moon one than a sun one. And in a matter of, from the point of view of the movement, apparent movement of the sun and the moon, you could, let's say it could be anticipated to the moment in which the sun and the moon and the earth is going to be positioned in a 180-degree line. Mathematically, it is represented by the image that you can see there, which is the point in which the orbit of the moon crosses regarding the other orbit. What is the problem of this? We know that the moon, we know that moon regarding the path that the sun goes and the sun, it is different, a 5-degree and 9-minute difference. So if that difference doesn't exist, we would have an eclipse, a sun eclipse every new moon, maybe, okay? So that doesn't happen because the moon, within its cycle, the annual cycle, it has extreme points that are bigger sometimes than the sun, that are known as the major stops, okay? What did they do, these people, okay? And I just present the model, okay? This model of the organization of the nodes, and it seems that the Incas, eventually also the Maya, and also the local population of the north of Chile, okay, from the arrival of the Inca, they knew the cycle of the moon near 19 years, okay, starting from the observation of the eclipse. And starting also from the knowledge of these extreme points that the moon has, okay, over the horizon in two solstices, but also there are a huge stop to the north, to the south of the moon. We had a big stop of the moon near the December stop, okay? And the moment in which the moon and the sun gets close to certain points of the horizon, we can have these eclipses. And from the systematical account of the days and the moon phases, you can anticipate the eclipse, not the next one, but maybe the one that is going to happen in the next 4 years. We go back to Mesoamerica. In Mesoamerica, besides the observation of the extreme points of the moon and the sun, also it was used some holes on the ground, like a cavern, as I was telling you in Chichen Itza, and or through the use of the architecture to know the path of the sun on the grounds. This is a very interesting site. I called you, to look the bibliography and references regarding this. Is Cochicalco. It is located in the latitude 18 degrees north. It is more or less aligned with the latitude in which we can expect the zenithal path, okay, of this moon to the north. Okay, we have a stop to the north, which is 5 degrees more than the ecliptic. 28.5, we have the south stop, 28 0.5, and we have minor to the north stops 9 years after the main stops in the latitude 18.5, okay, to the north. What happened in this place? By the use of observation, okay, of this zenith path in a date near May 14th or July the 20th, 29th, and through the use of the observation of the moon, of the full moon, eventually, according to the Arnold researching papers in the 1990s, it was possible to anticipate the moon eclipse. Possible. Always, I speak about in the social sciences, we speak about inconditional, you know. How will we move this to the Incas? Okay. They built their capital. They built some artificial pillars in the horizon that today are not visible. They are located in the Pichu mountain that you could observe by them the sunset, the passing in the anti-zenith, okay, which is a complicated concept. Okay, we have the zenith, the nadir, okay. What happens in Cusco? If these guys, they build the pillars, these lines are the pillars, okay? They observe the sunset. For the moment of the passing of the nadir, okay, which implies an effort, an intellectual effort, okay? You need to know the path of the sun through the zenith during 6 months and know the nadir, okay? Observe it, build the pillars. Eventually, any full moon that occurs in a certain date near the zenith of the sun, October the 30th or February the 13th, that coincides with the pillars, okay, it can be used. So it can be understood by a total eclipse or partial. Next, please. If that eclipse is observed, and by the counting of the months, it is not necessary to be repeated again, okay, in the same cycle, eventually you can actually anticipate the next eclipse, the next one, and the next one, okay? This works at a theoretical level, and it's very interesting to understand it as a model just to test it, all right? What happens? And with this, I finish because I am just about the time. Santiago, Chile City, okay, it was founded in February 1541, okay?
En una zona que aparente hasta se sabía que era una zona baldía, es decir, sin nada, pero hoy se sabe que llamémoslo así, el sector cercano a la Plaza de Armas, al sur del río Mapocho y al poniente de Cerro Santa Lucía, correspondía a un antiguo asentamiento prehispánico del periodo Inca. Una plaza,
it used to be an old main square, okay, an Ushu platform, and eventually also the ones that origin this administrative center, they also created some elements of the topography, particularly the mountains. In particular, the Plomo mountain, okay, which is located in the Andine mountain range, with an offering was left there, Acapacocha, okay. As I was telling you, these snowy mountains are spaces in which the ancestors live, okay. So people would go there and they would sacrifice humans, and then they would honor the mountain and generate this connection between the terrestrial space, you know, on the mountain and the space. What happens in Santiago, Chile, Spaniards arrived, they founded the city on the pre-Hispanic settlement, and they respect, it seems, the direction, okay, the walls of the pre-Hispanic orientation. Just like in Mexico, it happens the same in Santiago. And an interesting fact is that the sunrise, it doesn't coincide with the solstice on the equinox, okay? But some days near September 14th and the 13th regarding the view that we have into the west, okay? Next. What is the interesting thing about this is that, and this is in my PhD dissertation, there is a possibility, okay, that every third year it is possible to observe the full moon near the direction of Cathedral Street and Mojica in the city center, okay? And this eventually, from the knowledge, systematic knowledge of the position of the sun in the horizon, and and the account, the numbers of the solar moon calendars, it could be observed. So as it was used in the past, these huge holes on the ground, pyramids in the architecture, the Seque system, okay, it seems in the administrative system of Santiago, it would allow to anticipate one or many eclipses in the pre-Hispanic era. With this, I finish. When Cristóbal Colón, okay, Columbus arrived to the Caribbean, he came with a document that was written in 1474, okay, in a very small almanac, okay, and it seems that this sir used this information to scare, and control a local population through this something that could happen in the skies. That was something, like a fatality, was catastrophic. So when the sun dies and the moon dies, the social structure crumbles. Okay, and this knowledge is on the spite of who has this power, just like the Incas used knowledge of the forecasting of the eclipse to convince local population, okay? Spaniards did the same when they arrived to the continent, in some kind of way using this, this is all formal knowledge, scientific through observation in nature, by a political purpose, okay, or expansion purposes. And with that, we can basically say that the use of mathematics and geometry, and eventually the prediction forecast of these phenomena, such as eclipse, they have a social component, which is very important. Okay, for example, the eclipse tells us people that love the skies, for example, like us, there is this huge turmoil regarding this kind of a phenomena, which is strange, but it is also very beautiful. We can realize the development of the architecture, the astronomy development, and also the sciences, the pre-Hispanic sciences, they go along with the forecasting and this capacity of human being to be able to, I don't like to say like this, to adapt, control, and manage resources, the things that they have in their own context. I finished with this. I hope that it was of interest for you. It is just a sample, okay? There are some elements that for you to know a little bit about the Hispanic prehistory, okay? Indigenous knowledge present still in most of our communities regarding the skies and nature observation. Thank you. With that, I finish. Thank you very much.
Tomamos unas preguntas, pero antes de eso tengo un anuncio. Si quieren seguir
I have an announcement, please, if you want to keep sharing. We have a small break here with cookies and stuff, so if you want to speak about it a little bit more. But if you have any questions online, please.
Por favor.
Hola, hola a todos y a todas. Me presento primero, mi nombre es Valentina, soy encargada del
Hi
Museo
everyone, I'm
Arqueológico
Valentina. I'm in charge of the Limarí Museum, okay? The Archaeological Museum. I know that at the beginning of the presentation that this is focused in the region of Coquimbo, but I would just like to know, in a very general view, what are these elements related to mathematical geometry can be seen here in this area, considering that Coquimbo, it is a very important cultural heritage place, so the architecture is not that monumental, like in Mexico, but like in the Inca world. What elements can we see here within this same logic? How can we get this to this local reality? El Molle, in the region of Coquimbo, it's a very interesting place to work. It has one of the skies, very good conditions of sky observation, huge concentration of rural construction and designs from the early ages, okay? And the works that they have been doing from the 1960s, Meyer, Bayelón, okay? And after that, maybe Troncoso and Gonzalez allowed me to have like let's see, a first image of the area in which we have found and encountered some elements, some mathematical elements and interpretations We also have a publication. Rodolfo Alderón is here. Is a collaborator of the paper, in which we work with El Molle sites located near Cerro La Silla here and Pachón in the first stage. And some of these places are visible. Among them, they keep very important information about the observation of the moon and also historic worlds. It would be interesting in the future to widen this work and extend this to other areas of the region. So you have here the Linfato site, which was not included in the FIC project because of different reasons, but it would be interesting to know and to work on that. And also that turns very important to say the value of the people that still live there. Okay, part of the project that we're developing, and it considers interviews to the old kind of population. We could register in registers related to the sky observation, not known in the casual world and not in the classic ethnography in the Atacama region, particular names for the Milky Way, you know, the usage of the sky for atmospherical purposes. Okay, so I believe that the potential of the Coquimbo region beyond the art, you know, and the archaeology is on the people. Okay, that makes sense to the region. Many times it's not being looked at, you know, like the Atacameña area, you know, but it has a very important potential. Thank you.
Hola, muchas gracias por tu charla, muy interesante. Hay una consulta sobre, bueno,
Thank you for the lecture.
fue fundado sobre una localidad antiguamente inca. Eso significa que los incas llegaron hasta un poquito más al sur.
Okay, the Incas, they go through the Maule, okay? I understand that. They come across with the Araucanian population. Do you have any influence in the region that goes from the south of Atacama to Coquimbo, from Incas, in the Diaguita culture, and the ones that have been found here, in terms of mathematics and geometry? In the thesis of Paula González is an interesting background to go deep into that topic, okay? I only focus on the Molle art, craftery, but it would be interesting to go into the ceramic ethnography, okay? The ones that have the chance to the Archaeological Museum in La Serena, I remember the room, okay, the vessel in particular. There are some reasons that it could represent, I would say, comets even, but the iconography, okay, the Diaguita, it has a geometrical and complex structure, and I assume that we can encounter astronomical data in the spatial organization, and also regarding the colors, because these vessels have different colors and the colors represent things. Okay, not only the shapes because of the drawings, you know, but it represents idea and the colors that are inside these artifacts. And another interesting element, it would be good to add up, okay, the location, spatial location of these artifacts in terms of mortuary events in the El Olivar cemetery regarding the direction of the bodies. As I understand, I haven't seen those data, you know, for sure, but it's related to the sunset, okay? There are differences between men and women, kids, adults, and also the orientation of the artifacts have a cosmological sense that in the long term it can provide you with an answer of a mathematical structure, of a numerical sense of the things. So that is what I can say about that. Okay.
Para respetar la hora, vamos a terminar acá, pero por favor,
So we're going to be finishing now, but we're going to gather here if you want to stay. Thank you for the online people who is sharing with us your time, all right? Thank you to our guest, please.